Welcome, everybody. Doug and Alea here for another session. What are we talking about this time, Alea?
We're going to be talking a bit about boundaries, empathic sensitivity, and why, when you're an empath, you want to be really mindful of your boundaries.
So let's start with the heck is a boundary and why do we need it?
Well, from a 3D perspective, do you want to talk about that? And then I'll talk about it at an energetic.
A boundary is defines what's inside the boundary and what's outside the boundary. So when we talk about setting boundaries, we're talking about how much we're going to allow other people to influence our behaviors or our thoughts or attitudes or our emotions based on their behaviors towards us. And some behaviors we don't tolerate, and when we don't tolerate those behaviors, we call it setting boundaries for ourselves. In other cases, we may set boundaries for another person. So for example, if you're a parent and you will set boundaries around permissible behavior for your children because they've got to learn how to control themselves, and the only way they can learn how to do that is if they're constrained in some way or another. And so that's setting the boundaries for somebody else. From my perspective, boundary setting becomes important for maintaining a clear identity of who you are, making sure that you are not violated or abused, and having a very clear, bright line test about when your boundaries are being violated.
So there's that with boundaries. And then from an energetic perspective, we also have boundaries that I talk about like a bubble that you're in. It's like an energetic bubble. And you've got your energy fields, and then there's the perimeter of your energy fields. And so when I'm feeling into being an energetic being empathic, I'm referring to the boundaries as how are you holding your space, your energetic space? And what is it that you fill your space up with? And so right now, just take a deep breath in. You pull yourself into what I call the divine line, this river of light that flows within you. And imagine that you are in a bubble or an egg. And it could have a particular color, vibration, sound, resonance. And maybe your bubble is really little and it only goes a foot off the perimeter of your body. Or maybe you've got a really big bubble and it's 5 feet out or 10 feet out or 30 feet out. Just take a moment to reference your bubble, the size of your bubble. And if your bubble feels strong, full, or depleted, empty, little. And you're just using your imagination. You're using some energetic part of you. And then you can also be referencing, how does the perimeter of your bubble, your boundary feel? Does it feel solid at the perimeter? Or are there not very clear, is there not a very clear line? And so when we're an empath, we want to be really mindful of holding appropriate boundaries, because when you're highly empathic and reactive, it's because we usually are not holding good boundaries for ourselves at an energetic level with this bubble. And one of the ways to actually hold really strong, beautiful boundaries is, it's like there's some steps, is you start feeling into the concept of being responsible for meeting your own needs. Meaning you want to feel safe, you want to feel valued, you want to be appreciated, you want to be supported, you want to experience connection. And one of the ways to increase strong boundaries, healthy boundaries, is to start holding responsibility for meeting your needs deep in your core. And as you hold responsibility, you move into power, into empowerment, which then reflects onto a strong energetic field. As you're holding responsibility for meeting your needs and aware of your needs, then there's a second concept that I talk about in my book, 7 Cups of Consciousness. And it's actually the 6th concept of you are a being, a soul, your body is a being that have cultivated particular gifts, wisdom, mastery, qualities. And when we're empathic, we may have a tendency to give our gems, our gifts, our wisdom, our mastery, our support, our safety bubbles, fabric, to others. And then you get depleted. And so when you are in the presence of other people, your energetic fields might have an unconscious default mode of, I'm just going to give all my stuff away. tending to people, loving people, supporting people. We might even be a little bit of the empathic pleaser. And we just give our power away, and we're just giving our love away. And all of our gems that we've been cultivating for lifetimes, we give it away. And that makes your bubble tiny, empty, bad boundaries. Because one of the best ways to hold really beautiful, strong boundaries, other than taking personal responsibility for meeting your needs, is to gather your gifts, hold your gifts on you, around you at a vibrational level. And I talk about this in the daily cups and the tall cups, those energetic protocols that I do, and in the book, 7 Cups, of how to retrieve your gifts off of others, hold them vibrationally in your field, which then creates this energetic reflection of really strong boundaries. And so we want to think about boundaries at an energetic level as one of your primary protection mechanisms and a support mechanism. So if you don't have really great boundaries and you've given all of your gifts away, you're not going to feel safe. You're not going to feel supported. And that could also negatively impact your finances, your resources. So a practice that you can do is to invite some energetic aspect of you to start retrieving all of your gifts, your wisdom, your fabric, your threads at an energetic level. This is far beyond the mind. Your mind doesn't do this work. Back on yourself, cleaning it, recalibrating it, reweaving it in your fields, and holding your gifts on you, in you, for you, which then supports you, sustains you, and creates really strong boundaries. And then there's a third practice to do with boundaries, and that is to first honor yourself before you honor another. Oh, I could do that for them, but then I'd be exhausted and I'd get depleted and I might get sick. How could I show up in this person's life in a way that actually does work for me and is healthy and balanced and sustainable? So what you do is you start putting you first, not in a narcissistic way, but you start being very mindful of how could you show up in a way that honors you. Then we have the ability to be of service from a place of balance, as opposed to the martyrdom, the codependent, which just puts us into a strong empathic loop. So 3 steps: holding responsibility for your needs deep in your core, gathering your gifts at a vibrational level around you, and pondering how you could honor you first, how you could show up in a way that honors you, and then it's really sustainable and you don't go into resentment. And then you also don't get depleted. So practicing those steps, and if you feel really depleted and really empty because you're just like, oh my God, I gave all my gifts away, you could just have this very silent, gentle mantra or out loud of retrieve my gifts, some energetic aspect of me, my body, my teams, retrieve my gifts off of everyone and everything. And actually, let's just take a moment and just repeat after me. Inviting some energetic aspect of me, inviting some energetic aspect of my body to retrieve our gifts off of everyone and everything, to clean them, recalibrate them, reweave them in our own energetic fields. And you're just letting that intent happen in your fields, far beyond the mind. So retrieve your gifts, hold them on you, and also recognize that your vibrational gifts, they only work in your own field. They don't work when you put it on others. When you put it on others, it actually can weigh them down. It can create resentment in them, anger, frustration in them, because you just put your vibe on them. Your vibe is cleanest for you and works best in your fields. So these are some practices that you could start playing with to see if it starts to make some small incremental shifts in how you hold your boundaries with your empathic sensitivity. Anything else that you can add, Doug? Or does that feel like a good wrap up?
That's pretty complete. I would say that maybe I can just talk about emotional boundaries for a moment.
Yeah.
So people that are empaths or highly sensitive have a difficult time discerning the boundary between what they feel and what other people are feeling.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's the biggest challenge. So one of the ways that you can build a stronger boundary is by working on your own emotional self-awareness. And there are 3 exercises, I guess, that you can use to build up your own boundaries so that you are more self-aware of what you're experiencing. The first exercise is to listen to radio ads, a 30-second radio spot. And if you don't have a radio, just go get on the internet and Google radio spots, and there are a million of them out there. And listen to that 30-second radio spot with a pencil and a piece of paper and write down all the emotions that you can hear in the announcer's voice in that 30 seconds. And do that for like 10 or 15 different radio spots. So maybe the exercise will take you half an hour. In the beginning, it'll be hard because you're probably not used to listening to and identifying emotions. With practice, over a couple of days, it'll get a lot easier. And it's also helpful for you you can go out on the internet and get a vocabulary of emotions. There are lots of lists out there, and just find a list of emotions to get your vocabulary built up. Then the second thing to do is you can either go onto YouTube, or if you're watching a movie or you're streaming a movie, turn the volume off for a minute and a half, 90 seconds, and write down all the emotions that the actors are portraying in the moment. And again, if you practice this over a period of a week or two, you'll find that your ability to discern emotions will become much stronger. And then start paying attention to your own emotions, so that when, again, if you're watching a movie, good movies are almost always emotional. Start paying attention to exactly what you're experiencing emotionally. You're excited, you're sad, you're joyful, you're whatever it might be, angry, frustrated, whatever it might be. Write down your feeling. And again, the process of articulating what you are feeling and writing it down builds new neural pathways in your brain that allow you to become much more discerning about the emotions around you. And then the last thing you can do is, if you go out in public to a mall or someplace where there are people wandering around, sit on a bench and just read the emotions of the people walking by you. You'll be able to distinguish between their emotions and what you're feeling. What am I feeling? What are they feeling? And again, that will sharpen the boundary between your emotions and somebody else's emotions. And again, with a couple of weeks practice, you will really strengthen your own sense of identity around your own emotions. And you'll be able to discern with much more clarity whether what you're experiencing is your own feelings or your own emotions or somebody else's. So those are some simple practices you can start engaging in to help build stronger emotional boundaries. Want to add anything to that, Leah?
Well, then I started thinking about all these other layers around boundaries, but I think we'll sit with this one, and we can always talk about this more if people wish.
All right, then we'll call it end of a session. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.